The chilling and disturbing disappearance of Brian. Let's check it out. She's
It's a
recording.
chilly night in 2006. Brian Shaffer is a medical student on spring break. He is seen walking into
Shout out
this
to all my med
bar
students.
with two friends. As time went by, the bar closed and everyone could be seen leaving the bar. Everyone except one man, Brian Shaffer.
He's still at the bar.
When the bar closed at 2 a.m, his two friends stood outside the bar and tried to call his phone. No
How did they even lose the sight of him in the first place? Like, if y'all went together, make sure y'all stick together the whole time.
response.
Especially if y'all
The
drinking.
two friends
That'd be
assumed
sick.
Brian went home sometime earlier that night, so they headed home themselves. Brian was
That's
not
a L.
seen leaving the bar on the camera covering
Come on, bro.
the exit.
Can't leave your friends like that. Is that him?
This is the story of Brian Shaffer, a disappearance so baffling it defies all logic and leaves us with more questions than answers. Brian is a second-year medical student studying at Ohio State University. It was there he met his girlfriend of 9 months, Alexis Wagner, a fellow med student. The couple had promising careers ahead and planned a trip to Miami in the following weeks to come. Brian often expressed his thoughts and opinions on his MySpace biography. "I have an awesome and amazing girlfriend. She's super hot and lots of fun.
She's super hot and lots of fun. I really love music. This doctor thing is really just a job, only temporary, until I get a band together and put records."
A month before his disappearance, Brian faced
Pushing a
the
man and woman.
devastating loss of his mother,
This
Renee, to
MySpace.
cancer. Brian was extremely close with his mother, describing her on his MySpace as the greatest, most wonderful person in the world. Renee's passing deeply affected Brian, and in the following weeks, in March, Brian would ask Alexis if she would run away with him. This is an oddly suspicious thing to say for someone.
Yeah, I like legit when it's down bad. I feel this sometimes. Like sometimes I feel like just running away, but you just can't run away from your problems. You know, you just gotta like face it off head on. Because sometimes in our mind, something like something that seems really small in our mind, we make it really big. But in actuality, the problem isn't that big. It's small. You just gotta keep that in mind. Whatever you're dealing with, like if you have anxiety because of one big problem, just know that it's in your head and that you may seem like it's the worst thing happening to you, but really it is. It's like it's you're gonna get through
Someone
it
who would
for sure.
disappear into thin air weeks later. But this could have been a joke or an exaggerated reaction. However, the next thing Alexis recalls is even more concerning. "You should move on with your life and find someone else, as I am having a difficult time dealing with my mother's death." If Brian was joking or not, we will never know, as
He
a
was
week
not
later,
joking. That is for real. Like he was really going through it. That's
Brian
not a joke.
Shaffer
That's like
was
for real.
never seen again.
Yeah.
Friday, March 31st, 2006 was the start of spring break. After losing his mother and the pressure of studying for his finals, Brian Shaffer desperately needed this break. His trip to Miami with his girlfriend was just 3 days away, and it was thought to be where Brian would propose to Alexis. The next few weeks of his life were going to be a life-changing experience, but not for the reasons anyone could have imagined. On the evening of Friday, 31st of March, Brian met up with his father for a steak dinner. His father reported Brian seemed tired and suggested to Brian to get an early night. However, Brian had already made plans to go out that night with a good friend, Clint Florence. After dinner, Brian and Clint met up at the Ugly Tuna Saloon located in Columbus, Ohio. An hour later, at around 10 p.m, Brian made his last call with his girlfriend to wish her a good night. According to Alexis, Brian sounded completely normal, nothing for her to worry about. After having shot some beers at the Ugly Tuna Saloon, Brian and Clint wandered through the neighbourhood. Clint reported they had stopped by multiple bars, each ordering a shot of
Bro, he's basically just drinking his problems away. Like that's what a lot of people sort to. Just getting high, getting drunk, just to like escape reality for like a few moments, you know.
liquor at each stop.
And then once it's
At
done,
around
you start,
midnight,
it
the
all
pair
rushes
met up
into you.
with Clint's friend,
Once
Meredith
you're like, you
Reed,
know,
who offered to drive them back to
done
the Ugly
being
Tuna
drunk or
Saloon for a
whatever.
final round of drinks. Security footage outside the bar shows the three riding an escalator to the bar's entrance at 1:15 a.m. 40 minutes later, at 1:55 a.m, Brian and Clint were seen outside the bar talking to two women. Whilst Clint and the other women were talking, Brian spoke to Brighton Zacco. She reported Brian being flirtatious with her and that the two
Come on, Brian, you gotta grow. Come on, man.
even exchanged numbers. Although unethical, Brian so far has shown no signs of wanting to disappear or any sense of unusual behaviour. 2 minutes later, Brian can be seen moving off camera back towards the direction of the bar entrance. This would be the last time Brian was seen on camera. When the bar closed at 2 a.m, Clint and Meredith waited outside the bar where Brian was nowhere to be seen. They tried calling him several times, however, all his calls went to voicemail. The two didn't think much of it and figured Brian went home sometime earlier that night. Throughout the weekend, calls from his father and his girlfriend went unanswered, and on Monday morning, Brian missed his flight to Miami, sparking a missing persons investigation.
The investigation. Let's see what infos they got.
So let's go back to Monday, April 3rd, 2006, when the police report was filed. Tell me what you, as the lead detective, started doing.
Well, once the report come in, the initial officer started looking at the homeless shelters, hospitals, the typical places that you would look for somebody that may have gone missing.
After realising that this was no ordinary missing persons investigation, detectives went over security footage. Looking at the security footage,
In a way, this is like the only security footage they had. So apparently he was with them at 1:57 a.m, right? And then at 2 a.m. they noticed that he was gone. So like legit, he disappeared for like 3 minutes, and he wasn't able to be found.
of what we do have of Brian, he was
Right?
seen at
If I'm getting the
1:15
times right.
a.m. going up an escalator, entering the bar. The next time Brian appears was 42 minutes later at 1:57 a.m. after Brian and Clint go outside to talk to two girls.
Seems
Brian
like
is seen going back towards the bar. This is the last movement we have of Brian. Detectives remained uncertain whether Brian disappeared on his own accord or if someone else
Nah,
was
it had to be
involved.
someone else involved.
But this still doesn't explain why nobody in the building or the numerous security cameras didn't notice him leaving the bar. Investigators next analysed every possible way Brian could have left the building, starting off with the construction site. Behind the camera's view, there were two doors which led to a construction site. Investigators wondered if Brian exited the bar through the construction site. Some even wondered if Brian fell into cement. However, investigators believed that this was not the case.
There's just no way Brian was left anywhere in that building. I mean, it was searched with a fine-tooth comb. We had the cadaver dogs come in and go through that building. And, had he been in there, even if he was covered up with dirt, they would have hit on it and picked up on it.
There was another possible exit through the fire escape, which was located near the front entrance. After investigators interviewed the manager of the Ugly Tuna Saloon, it was confirmed nobody had gone through the fire escape linked to the bar. As well as this, investigators checked cameras surrounding the courtyard where Brian was nowhere to be seen. Another way Brian...
So did he, like, I'm kind of confused now, because, like, how could he actually disappear? Because if you went back in the bar, there's only like two possible exit points, and yet, even outside the bar, there's no view of him, like,
could
being
have
there.
escaped was by jumping off the balcony of the Ugly Tuna Saloona.
But then they would have found his
Although
body.
not a very credible source, a Redditor recalled drunk people
Alright. another professional Reddit person.
jumping off that balcony. However, when interviewing people at the bar, no one witnessed such an occurrence. Jumping off a bar without anyone noticing whilst drunk was just too unlikely. How Brian left the bar was still one question in itself. However, it still doesn't explain what happened afterwards. How did Brian just vanish into thin air? Brian's phone didn't have GPS, so investigators couldn't locate where it was. 7 months after Brian was declared missing, investigators managed to ping signals from a cell tower about 14 miles northwest of Columbus. However, the cellular company claims it was a glitch. In an interview with the lead detective, John Hurst, he mentions they pinged his phone numerous times located near the Ugly Tuna Saloona.
And we did get a couple pings back then, a couple areas that we checked. One was out on the west side. We went out there and checked an area, and then there was another one down on, I believe it was Kenny Road and around Lane Avenue. Detective Edwards and myself went down and we checked that area to see if we could locate, anything that would be useful in investigations.
This meant 2 things. Brian did indeed leave the building. Secondly, his phone was on for days after the investigation, which leads us to the sole question. If his phone was on, why did Brian ignore his family's phone calls? Or why did he not contact the police if he was in danger?
Yeah, I mean, he was going through it with his mom, and he was stressed about school. Like, there's only really one possibility why he didn't answer, and it is like a real tragic if he did ended up going that route and taking his own life. But oh, theories.
Many theories and speculation surround what might have happened to Brian Shaffer, but none provide a definitive answer. Let's start with the most obvious theory,
The thing is, they
which
didn't even
many
find his
people
body. It was
believe.
crazy.
Brian Shaffer was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Oh, yeah, this could be
Maybe he bumped into someone or said something to the wrong person, or perhaps he talked to someone's girlfriend. Brighton? Could she have had a boyfriend who was responsible for Brian's disappearance? Some people also believe that Brian's friend, Clint Florence, might have been involved in his disappearance since he
What?
refused.
His own friend? Bro, I don't even think he's a close friend because he just left. Like, legit waited out 2 a.m. and like, legit didn't even care. They just left the bar. They didn't even call no one. So this actually could
take
be
a
a
lie detector
possibility.
test during the investigation.
Alright, that's okay. Polygraphic tests I heard that aren't really that accurate. They're not really that accurate. Like, a person can be actually like having some sort of anxiety and telling the truth, and it'll come off as a lie, but they're just like really like having anxiety. So I don't really
Although
polygraph
I don't
tests.
find this
I don't trust.
particularly suspicious. Lie detector tests can be extremely unreliable
Yeah, that's
and
what I'm
could
saying.
cause Clint trouble, especially if they're inaccurate. But as I was researching more about this case, a more interesting theory caught my eye. It was alleged Clint fancied Meredith, and Meredith fancied Brian. Perhaps some sort of jealousy was involved. There is also the possibility that Brian intentionally disappeared, wanting to escape after his mother's passing, although many close family and friends insist that he wouldn't do that. We can't be for sure what he might have been planning. This could have been possible if Brian had a change of clothes to disguise himself, well enough to evade detection by the cameras.
Alright, but where is he gonna hide that clothes? Like, he went to the bar with nothing. Where is he gonna get the nut of disguise? Unless he beat up someone and stole their purse.
However, when investigators reviewed the footage, they
He had
managed
nothing.
to identify everyone who left the bar that night.
And yeah,
Brian was not showing any signs of unusual behaviour either. Someone who wanted to disappear without a trace would likely be looking into the cameras and looking for the blind spots. Yet Brian not once looked or acknowledged them. There is a possibility that Brian wasn't seen leaving the bar because he was in the blind spot of the security camera. If we know he didn't stay inside the bar, he must have left somehow, which leads us to our next theory. Just outside the Ugly Tuna Saloona was a service exit that led to a construction site. The theory I've settled with is that Brian must have escaped through the construction site. Whilst outside, he was met with foul play. Perhaps a fight breaks out or a robbery gone wrong. Thanks so much for the small percentage of you still watching till the end. If you'd like to support me,
make sure you check out this channel. I don't know. I feel like I think it has to between, you know, he took his own life, or he got into foul play. He met the wrong people in the wrong crowd. He just went to the wrong place, and then at the wrong time, and then yeah, it is. Cause there be a lot of like mobs out there. So hope you all enjoy. Have a good one, and yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already.